Hey guys, last video on Romeo and Juliet here from Mr. Cooney, and I'm going to review the Act 5 study guide. So I've got the text here. I'm going to highlight a few things while I talk through. And well, the first thing I want to deal with for honors class more directly is, in your opinion, does Romeo and Juliet conclude with a happy ending? Consider the resolution of the grudge and the tragic death. The first of those being, maybe something happy, and of course, the second thing, the tragic death, being something sad. Support your answer with evidence from the final scene as well as from the rest of the play. So you could go either way on this. I think most people are going to, think that it's a mix, right? These prompts are usually not going to have one right answer, of course. Obviously, it's sad and it's tragic. It is a tragedy, a Shakespearean tragedy, and Romeo and Juliet, the protagonists of the story, die. We knew this the whole time, right? So maybe it's not as much of a jarring, tragic ending since we already know that it's going to happen. And the happy aspect of it is that it does indeed, just like the chorus said at the very beginning, but for nothing but their end could bury their parents' strife. So the end of Romeo and Juliet, their end, the end of their lives, does bury their parents' strife, and we do see the Montagues and Capulets reconcile at the end of the story. So in that aspect, it could be viewed as a happy ending, but you can feel however you want. Okay, so real questions here. How does Romeo convince the apothecary, that's the druggist, pharmacist guy, that he should break the law and sell Romeo some poison? Support your answer with evidence from the text. Okay, so all the way back in the beginning, he's talking to the apothecary, and that's after he hears from Balthazar, and here we go. Such moral drugs I have, but man to his laws death, and that utters them. So he's not supposed to give Romeo uh, those drugs, but he says, "The world is not thy friend. Contempt and beggary hangs upon thy back. The world is not thy friend, nor the world's law." In other words, he's recognizing that he's poor, right? Take this gold, right? In the apothecary, he says, my poverty, but not my will consents. I know I shouldn't do this, but I'm tempted by the money because I'm poor. And Romeo says, I pay the poverty and not thy will, right? So he takes it. And then Romeo makes kind of a dark joke about, there is thy gold, worse poison to men sold doing murders in this loathsome world, and these poor compounds mayest thyself, kind of making a joke about how money is the real poison here because it makes you do things that you might not otherwise do. Okay, second question is, what prevented the friar's letter from reaching Romeo? Support your answer with evidence from the text. So he had sent Friar John to let Romeo know, of course, that Juliet is not dead, right? And he gets back, and the friar asks him, what says Romeo, right? And Friar John says the following: going to find a barefoot brother out of order to associate me in the city, visiting the sick, and finding him the searches of the town, suspecting we were both in a house where the infectious pestilence did reign. Now you might have been thrown off by that word choice. I tried to point that out in my scene by scene videos, but that means that the plague is around. And again, that's a really kind of creepy, strange, almost funny coincidence that that's what keeps them from getting there, because they're basically quarantining people out of the city. Same kind of stuff we're dealing with right now, right? So they'd sealed up the doors, would not let us forth. So my speedy mantle was stayed, and somehow the seemingly coincidental, or the seeming coincidence of Friar John not being able to make it in, but Balthazar being able to make it in and mistakenly inform Romeo that Juliet is dead, forms kind of more of that uh, almost too much, coincidence that makes us feel like fate is at work here, even though if you don't believe in that sort of thing, you can still view it as coincidence. Okay, question 3. When Romeo is trying to convince Paris, they, coincidentally converge on the Capulet family tomb at the same time, to go away and not fight with him. Why does Romeo tell Paris that he loves Paris better than himself? Support your answer with evidence from the text. Okay, let's kind of fast forward up to that scene there. Right, we're in the monument belonging to the Capulets. Paris goes there first. Romeo hides, and then they finally, Romeo talks his way in past Balthazar to get him to not follow him. He jumps out. Paris sees him, recognizes him. He's angry that he's there, doesn't understand why he would be there, right? And then Romeo says, I must indeed, and therefore come hither. Good, gentle youth, famous line here, tempt not a desperate man. Fly hence and leave me, think upon thee gone. Here's the line we're talking about. Begone, by heaven, I love thee better than myself, for I come hither armed against myself. Stay, begone, live, and hereafter say a madman's mercy did bid thee run you away. Romeo is trying to get him to leave because he doesn't want to inadvertently kill another person that he really doesn't have anything against, right? Like we said before, Paris is kind of an obstacle, and we might view him as a bad guy, but he really hasn't done anything wrong. he's ignorant of the circumstances, right? As was Capulet when he was talking to him about marrying his daughter. So Romeo is warning him, even though Paris isn't going to understand this. I came here to hurt myself. Don't tempt a desperate man. He loves the Paris better than himself because Romeo hates himself so much that he wants to kill himself. He doesn't want to kill Paris. He doesn't even know Paris. Trying to do the right thing, but it ends up badly, as does everything here. Number 4, just before Juliet takes her own life, what does the friar tell her that she should do now that Romeo is dead? Okay, so we have the whole scene where Romeo is talking over her and wondering why she's so beautiful still. We know she's really alive, that climactic climax there. And let's see. Okay, so he has to face Juliet with what's happened here. And he says, in Paris 2, come, I'll dispose of thee among a sisterhood of holy nuns. Stay not to question, for the watch is coming. Okay, so the answer to the question is that he will bring her to a nunnery, a convent, right? And the reason he might do that is because there's not really anything left to do. Her family is going to be furious and confused, and the friar is probably panicking too and wants to maybe even cover his tracks. Uh, and that's what you would have done in that time when a woman's life is so messed up that it's irreparable, right? That someone might just go off and be a nun if that's a possibility. Okay, number 5. Near the end of the play, when the prince says that all are punished, what is he suggesting that the Capulets and Montagues are being punished for, and what is he, the prince, being punished for? Support your answer with evidence from the text. Let's past all the explanations by Montague and the friar and telling what happens, which is all true, right? And we finally get to the prince's kind of famous speech here. I'll just highlight this whole thing here, right? So he says, this letter doth make good the friar's words, the course of their love, the tidings of their death. And here he writes that he did buy a poison of a poor apothecary, and wherewithal came to this vault to die and lie with Juliet. Where be these enemies? Capulet, Montague, he's lectured them before, right? See what a scourge, like a curse, is laid upon your hate. Your punishment for your hate of each other is the loss of your children, that heaven finds mean to kill your joys with love. And I, okay, here's the other part of the question, for winking at your discords. In other words, for only casually, it seems like more than casually at us, he issued some pretty serious consequences, right? But he doesn't feel like he took care of business. And because he didn't, because he took it too casually, in his mind, have lost a brace of kinsmen, like he has lost a group of people too, namely Mercutio in Paris, who are both nephews of his. All are punished, as in not all of you, the two families, just them, but everyone, even himself, right? And then we see Capulet and Montague join hands at the end and talking about building a monument to them. And the final words of the prince, never was there a story of more woe than this of Juliet and her Romeo. I hope you guys enjoyed this. We're not going to do a test over it or anything. I think you guys have done a good bit of work, especially if you've been, watching my videos and doing some good work on the study guides and stuff. But we're going to call it a year on Shakespeare. So hope you enjoyed it. And I'm sure I'll be back for some sort of video or not pretty soon.